They say faith can move mountains, but what do you do when the mountain moves and crushes the very thing you prayed for? Once upon a time, there was a girl named Mara, and all she ever wanted was to save her father. Mara grew up in a little house that smelled of wood smoke and hope. Her father was her world, a humble carpenter whose laughter filled their small home like music. Every evening, he'd return with sawdust on his hands and stories in his eyes. And he always said, "Faith, my little girl, is the wood that builds every miracle." But one day, that laughter turned into coughs, dry, painful, endless. The doctor said the word she feared most: cancer. From that day on, prayer became Mara's only language. She prayed while cooking, while walking, while crying. She prayed so hard her knees ached and her lips cracked. She fasted. She believed. She told everyone, God will not take him, not now. But one morning, the house was too quiet. The wood workshop stood still, and her father's chair, the one that always rocked gently by the window, never moved again. Mara fell to her knees, and for the first time, she didn't pray. She screamed, a sound that didn't sound human, a sound that could tear the sky open. "Why?" she whispered. "If faith moves mountains, why didn't mine move this one?" And heaven said nothing. Days turned into weeks, then months. Mara stopped going to church. She stopped singing, stopped believing. She packed her father's tools into a box and swore never to touch them again. Every nail, every chisel reminded her of promises that didn't come true. The smell of sawdust, once comforting, now made her sick. She moved to the city, took small jobs, and buried herself in noise so she wouldn't hear her thoughts. But grief has a strange way of whispering even through chaos. Every time she passed a hospital, something in her chest ached. That same helplessness she felt watching her father fade away. At night, she still dreamed of that rocking chair, still heard his voice saying, "Faith, my little girl, is the wood that builds every miracle." And she'd wake up angry that he still spoke in her dreams when she couldn't hear him in life. However, life has a way of returning us to the very places we swore we'd never go back to. One rainy morning, Mara saw a notice on a hospital wall: volunteers needed in pediatric ward. Something in her paused. She almost tore the paper down. She didn't belong anywhere near prayers or pain. But that same night, she dreamed again. Her father's voice, softer this time: "Build something with what's left, Mara." When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears, and before she could think, her hands were dialing the hospital number. Her first day in the ward was a storm she hadn't prepared for. Children, fragile, thin, some without hair, smiling like sunlight in broken bodies. The smell of medicine, the sound of beeping machines, it all felt too familiar. Every cry, every prayer whispered by desperate parents brought her right back to that night she lost her father. She wanted to run, but then a small voice stopped her. A boy, maybe 7, tugged her hand and said, "Miss Mara, will you read me a story?" She looked down at him, so pale, yet his eyes shone with pure light. His tiny hand wrapped around hers, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel hollow. Every evening she read to him stories her father once told her, stories of hope, of miracles, of faith the size of dust. But as weeks passed, the boy grew weaker, and one night, the doctors said he might not make it till morning.
Mara sat by his bed, holding his hand, whispering the prayer she thought she'd forgotten. "God, please, not again." She begged him to listen. She begged him to remember. She begged him to break the silence. Heartbeat monitor slows. A quiet sob escapes her. But just before dawn, the boy opened his eyes and smiled. "Don't cry," he whispered. "You told me miracles are made of faith, even when it hurts." And then his hand went still. Mara sat there, shaking, torn between pain and peace.
The next day, she didn't go home. She went to the hospital chapel, the one she always avoided, and she sat there in silence. The sun spilled through the stained glass window, painting her tears in gold. And that's when she realized her father was right all along. Faith doesn't always fix what's broken. Sometimes it builds something new out of the pieces. She thought she lost her purpose when he died, but now she saw the truth. She had become what she once prayed for: the comfort, the hands, the light. God hadn't ignored her. He had redirected her.
Sometimes heaven goes silent, not because it's empty, but because it's waiting for us to become the answer we're asking for. Faith is not about getting what we want. It's about finding purpose in what we lose. Mara didn't save her father's life, but she saved others because of him. And every time she walked through those hospital halls, she carried a miracle in her hands, one that was born out of heartbreak, shaped by silence, and carved from love. So if your prayers ever meet a quiet sky, don't mistake the silence for absence. Sometimes, God isn't saying no. He's saying, "I'm not done writing your purpose yet." This is Mind Matters. If this story touched you, please don't forget to share with your friends and family. Thanks for watching.